Can you define white supremacy?
Truth, justice, and spirituality. Hey, what's up, guys? It's me, TSP Rob Shiva. I got something really interesting here. I've been watching this podcast. I did another video prior to this with the same gentleman, the same three gentlemen, actually. So these two white dudes on the, I guess it would be your left side if you're staring at the TV, and the black gentleman on the right have been having this debate on race. It gets really interesting because I realize a lot of people of color, young people of color especially, don't realize what's really going on. They have an idea of what's happening, but they don't know how to answer these questions. So I'm just about to help this gentleman out and probably school a lot of these youngsters, because I've been around a long time, and it's just something I'm very interested in. I'm glad to see people are finally coming out and challenging people to what they believe. And without further ado, man, let's get this party started. All right, let's go. Let's hear what they have to say.
Like me.
Okay, so if we, I'm happy to
Neanderthal, right?
So I'm happy to grant the out of Africa theory for the sake of the conversation, but that I wouldn't phrase it the way that you just put it. So I mean, I guess I do want to just kind of like stick on one thing at a time, though. Like, what do you think of my responses so far? When I say that I don't have the desire to dehumanize anybody, do you believe me?
No.
Okay, why not?
No, not at all. I mean, you can have your belief says that. I mean, it's like,
what is my belief?
Like what? Huh?
What is my belief? Can you define white supremacy?
Before he goes to try to define white supremacy, these guys know exactly, before they ask these questions, they choose the people that they're going to speak to. They know that not many people will have look, they can't even answer this question in Congress. They go around in circles answering this question. As a matter of fact, for the last 60, 70, 80 plus years, they've been trying to figure out this same question to really define it, along with the institutionalized racism because of white supremacy. So you're asking this young man, who probably has an idea, like most people do, of what it is, but they can't really truly answer it. But I'm about to help him. By the way, folks, I am TSP Rav Shiva, otherwise known as American Deity 2.0, and this is the Daily Sutra. Truth, justice, and spirituality.
The ideology that you clearly say, you don't, like, you really haven't, you just basically saying, what I think is not true. You didn't really say anything for me to really dispute, other than you saying that that's not what you mean. Y'all haven't said it. Like, I'm trying to look for supporting facts that gives you guys the stuff to say what you say. I mean, where's the facts at? Everything. That's where I'm really challenging, because I have actual facts.
Okay. Well, so far,
anything you guys can say.
Right. So to respond to that, we're trying to make progress in the conversation, but we're asking you, you're making the accusation of white supremacy, so we're asking you to outline specifically what that means. What is white supremacy?
Let me see. Thinking that, like, you're superior, you're supreme. Everyone else is, nothing. You're elite. Everybody else is beneath you. You're better. Without you, there would be no civilization, right? You're the center stone of everything on earth. Your humanity started with white men, right?
Well, we
should be thankful in America that the white men brought us over here, right? That's what you're saying, right?
Okay, so it's complicated because it depends on if you're putting it on a moral level or if you're just talking about, objectively observing history. If I'm objectively observing, hold on, I'm responding to you. If I'm objectively observing history, I can make the observation that most of the innovation and societal progress has really been a European experience for the past 2,000 to 2,500 years or so. And you can say that makes me a supremacist, but other people who aren't white are also able to make the same level of observation and come to the same conclusion.
So you're speaking from an observation level?
Well,
you're speaking from an observation?
Well, it's also, you can also measure history too, because we've written it down.
But I'm saying, are you speaking, you saying you observed history, are you speaking from a observation? Because I'm speaking from facts. I mean, like, you can see what they teach you. Like I said, a lot of education, a lot of stuff that I learned from history did not happen in public school. I can tell you that right now. You're not talking to someone that, got their education from a public school system, okay? Because in America, you know, that's why a lot of Americans is ignorant, you know,
Fair enough.
because they don't teach you shit in the education system in America.
I hear you. So I think the best way for us to approach this is we're kind of having a meta conversation about who knows what. So I'd like for you to pinpoint specifically one point of contention that you have with us, and then we can sort of offer a rebuttal to it.
Okay, before they go any further, first of all, I just want to point something out. When the white gentleman just now asked him, first of all, try to define white supremacy, he did a good job. He's talking about superiority and the elitism, the elitist aspect of it, of basically how the Nazis very much supposedly viewed themselves as well. I don't know for a fact. I'm saying supposedly, allegedly. I don't know if that's exactly, because also, we know the Zionists have the exact same view, which are the Jewish extremists. So here in America, the white supremacy had that view as well. So it's really hard to define the white aspect of the supremacy, because some people say that having white pride, there's no problem in it. But what you have to add and attach to the idea of putting your race at the top is the destruction of every other race. Now, this goes all the way back into manifest destiny from the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants that came over from Great Britain, and they were called the colonialists. And when the colonialists came from Great Britain and traveled across the world, trying to conquer and take over areas, where they would have been able to do business, like the Moors did business. The Moors didn't go and try to take over anybody. They went and did actual business. Some of the richest people on the planet at the time, that goes back all the way to Mansa Musa of Africa, and I think he was an original Moor as well. And they didn't take that aspect of it and deal with it in that way. The Europeans, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, used what they called manifest destiny and said, this land is my land, and we're going to kill off everybody else, the inhabitants of this area. That's basically what they did here in the United States of America. And then they enslaved other races, like the Chinese, the Africans, to work for them here for free labor. Now, what happens is that people don't understand the word institutionalized, I think. So what happens when they build institutions here, in America, all the different institutions that we have set up, from Congress to hospitals to schools to everything you can think of, all of these facilities fall under laws and regulations. Now, who wrote the laws and regulations? White supremacists. If it wasn't for certain people in history that took the time to try and add civil rights and human rights into the Constitution, it would not be there. And this is the aspect of how deep white supremacy goes in this country. It's trickling down all through the ages, even into the tech that we use. Before artificial intelligence was racist, the predictive technology of Google was showing racism. Why? Because the founders of the company had to have had some form of racism embedded into their work. They won't tell you that, but you have to use your logical mind to figure these things out. Now, he's going to get into something here, which I'm going to definitely have a rebuttal or counter argument to, something for you guys to think about. So let's go further. I hope I'm making sense with you guys. Some people, I know, hate me because of the things I say, but I'm not saying anything bad. I'm just stating facts, guys. That's it. Historical facts. And you guys can look at that and look it up, everything I say online, and see if I'm lying about it, or correct me if I'm wrong. One of the two.
Listen, like I said, I think you guys, I didn't watch too much of I watched a little bit of your content. Like I said, okay. I just challenged some of your beliefs. Like, I think you guys are open. I seen that you guys are open, and I saw on mine. I'm willing to dialogue and go back and forth. I love learning. I have a bunch of multi, cultural friends, diverse, all that. So, I'm willing to learn just as much as you guys. But I challenge. I believe.
Like what's one thing you've heard us say that you want to debate about or have a conversation about? Like one specific point.
The statistics you have on African Americans in America, man. We can challenge that.
Which ones?
All of them, all your numbers, all the, because you got to understand, when you're going off something that's 40 million, It's only 40 million African Americans in America, right? So when you take that number, you want to go off the percentage of 40 million people. How many white people there is? What, 150
So it's
of
the
y'all,
per capita
right?
thing.
Are we
We're back at the per capita thing.
Should we do the per capita thing, or where are we going
Right.
from here?
We got to do per capita first
So-
before we move forward. Do you know what
So
per capita means?
when you break the numbers down,
Per person.
when you break the numbers down, it's just the same as y'all. That's why when you can look at a small city, people wonder why, oh, how is that small city so dangerous than a big city? Because you know why? They go by every crime per person, per square mile, right? So people be like, oh, how is that? Because that's the numbers change. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. So you're
when
saying
you
you're saying that because there's difference in quantity of each race, the proportionalities are different. So when we look at the numbers, they don't measure up because we aren't equal populations. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
we have a way to control for this. It's called per capita. So I'm going to give you an example just to kind of test that make sure we're on the same page with it. So let's say you have a group of 10 black people and 8 of them commit murder. So 8 out of 10 of these black people commit murder. And then you have a group of 100 white people and 70 of them commit murder. Which population is statistically more likely to commit murder based on that? So 8 out of 10 or 70 out of 100?
I'm gonna go with that. I mean, 70 out of, you said 8 out of 10, right? But it's damn near, but it's 70 out of 100. It's damn near fucking crazy too.
Yes, but the difference is we're talking
You look at that, it's
percentages.
slightly the same though. I mean, 8 to
Okay.
10 and 70 to 100.
Okay, 8 to 10,
Come
and then
on.
we'll say 30 to 100. So 30 is more murders. It's
All
a
right.
higher quantity of murders, but the percentage is lower. We agree? 30% versus 80%. So that's the per capita. You're controlling for proportionality. So we acknowledge that black people are a smaller population. White people are a larger population, which is why they commit numerically higher amounts of crime. It's actually still pretty close, and it's directly proportionate to their population, but it is technically higher in terms of overall criminality.
All right, so my point is this. You can go off of the numbers, but like, this is what I seen in your content as well, right? I seen somebody say, even if you have all the statistics and all that black on black, none of that affects white people. So what's the point of, like, how is this affecting white people, and why is this something that you feel is the need to go out there and inform all these people and try to create this narrative or this ideology that blacks are this and this is this, because we know what goes on in the hood. We know what goes, like, come on, like, we don't have to break it all down, okay?
Right,
We see what the entertainment system does to the youth. We see what's going on, the programming. Like, we could talk all day about all that. My point is this.
You want me to respond to that?
You
though?
bring up those numbers,
why are we doing that?
those statistics. Huh?
You want me to respond to what you're saying though? Because you're basically asking why are we talking about this issue? It's sort of like making a spectacle out of it. I'll be honest with you. We do.
Like, what's your point though? That's what I'm saying. Like, what's your
I got
overall
you.
point
I
to be
got you.
speaking? Because nobody's speaking, like, when we talk about
got
white
you.
people, we talk about white supremacy.
I want to respond to you, though. I understand what you're asking here. So here's the reason why it matters. My brother and I actually are quite versatile. We talk about a lot of different things, but I'm not sure if you actually watched the video where we responded to what you're asking there specifically. The answer is that it's culturally relevant. We talk about a lot of different things. We also do a lot of different kinds of content, but a lot of the racial stuff seems to go viral because people find it to be culturally relevant. Yes, it is true that intraracially, black people experience the most violence from other black people. The same can be said for other populations, but interracially and intraracially, black people are overrepresented in those crime categories, and a lot of people are starting to witness the downstream consequences of that. Now, you can say that I'm taking that and I'm weaving a narrative out of it, or I'm turning it into an ideology. I don't agree that that's an ideology. There's no doctrine, there's no bias. All I'm doing is making a video saying I live in a country and I don't like the fact that this crime is happening in such a large amount of percentage. So it's really not an ideology. It's a matter
I get
of
that,
making
but you think that
observation.
you don't think that, there's people, African Americans, that care just as much as you do,
Definitely
about
are.
what's going on.
Of course, there's a
You
lot.
know,
yeah.
but you have other stuff on your platform. It's like, it seems like you're misinformed. We talk about a lot, I
On
don't
which
know.
point,
Like,
though?
when I speak
Which
about
point?
white people, or when blacks, from my point of view, speak about white people, we talking about white supremacy and the stuff that's going on where we're witnessing in our government that we see today. You know what I'm saying?
Where do you think
I
I'm
get what y'all
misinformed?
saying, but I don't see how that affects y'all. I talk about that because that affect me. You know what I'm saying? It affect people who
Well, it
look
does.
like me.
It does
You know?
also affect white people because interracially, black people also commit the most violent crime, and so black people actually target white people statistically more than any other type of interracial crime that I've seen. The data is actually quite alarming when you look at it.
And what about white people? Like, everybody has they bad apples in their race, bro. Like,
We don't
you
want,
know what I'm
we
saying?
don't
You
want
can,
crime to happen at all. But like,
Right.
if a
but
population,
it happens, and white people been doing crimes
yeah,
like that's been catastrophic for centuries.
yeah.
And y'all can think that people who look like me is the most violent people that
Well,
exist
according to the
on
data,
Earth.
yes.
The data shows that, yes. Unfortunately.
Okay, let me stop here for a moment. He said a lot. I let them speak for a while. And I'll tell you, this young brother here is doing a very good job. All three of them are doing a good job in expressing themselves. And I don't judge people how they express themselves, but these two guys actually, they do get personal, and they try to usually use some ad hominem attacks, which are personal attacks on each individual, even to the way they speak and everything else. I don't do that, but what I will point out is that this gentleman here, if you can see my cursor here, seems to be the more smug. They're both smug, but he seems to be the more smug and snide type of person, where he's trying to come across as they're both trying to come across as they're being very objective and neutral. And in reality, if you listen very closely to what they're saying, they really don't even understand their own history, because he's using statistics in such a slick way. Yeah, we know proportions, and we know percentages, but I think this young brother may say it later. I can't remember, but you have to, if you're going to talk about crimes and you're going to talk about society, you have to talk about the almost anthropological, socio-political aspect of that society, how it came to be, what created the circumstances, the environment in these societies, And this is something that Dave Chappelle talked about at one time. I believe he was being interviewed on the Actors Studio, and he made the comment saying that maybe it's not the people, that there's anything wrong with the people. Maybe it's the environment that's actually sick. And I agreed with him 100% because it's something I always said. So this is something that they took out as a factor, which should be in this case, because of the topic and the conversation that they're having, should be applied into this conversation. It's not so black and white as they're trying to make it sound. Not to throw any puns in there or anything like that, but it really isn't just that black and white. There's a lot of gray area here. I don't mean to sound like Alan Dershowitz, but I would no way go there near anything that he says. I don't agree with anything that Alan Dershowitz says, but in this case, there is a lot of gray area, guys. And one of it is the institutionalized racism, the formation of the United States and the Congress, and every law and regulation that was enacted was not for the benefit of people of color at all. That came about only during the civil rights movement, which we know that people had lives taken, sacrificed to enact these laws to protect people of color, especially black people, who were not even considered human in the Constitution of America. So yes, there is some real deep-seated history that they seem to keep bypassing. Now, if everything is generational, they're talking about generational crime. If you were to look at it statistically, the amount of crimes that were done by white people here in America, and we use percentages and proportion, if you were to do that, you would see that white people behaved so badly in public with other races, they had to enact the civil rights movement. They had to enact human rights. These movements were created to prevent white people from doing the things that they did normally. Lynchings, killings, racism, that was the daily part of life in America. That was the norm, okay? So he doesn't talk about that. Why? Because they would never let anybody talk about that, because they have no damn answer for it. This is one of the reasons why I've been hated so much, among many other reasons probably, but this is the main reason why I was hated so much years ago when YouTube had just started and I was starting to flourish. These people heard me speak and they did not want me to speak because they have no brains and no way to defend themselves against the things that I have to say. I faced it when I did stand-up comedy. I faced it in almost every aspect of my life, being born and grown up here on the streets of Brooklyn and the backwoods of Texas. Anywhere I went, I was able to put up an intellectual argument, and it always came to violence whenever I put up the intellectual argument, because they couldn't comprehend a response to come back. Once these people know that they're wrong, their only answer is violence. And you can see that throughout their entire history. Why are black people so violent? Because generationally here in America, if you look at the genetic dispositions and predispositions, trauma and violence has been proven to be a genetic factor. You can look that up online as well. So generationally, if black people have been treated a certain way by white people, there is going to be a way of reacting. They even proved this with cats and mice. They said that mice don't know anything about cats, but as soon as they smell the scent of the cat, they run. Nobody taught them to do that. They know inherently to run. Why? Because over generations of cats hunting and killing mice. People don't want to admit this, but it will be proven. It has been proven already. I don't have the science, because I'm not a geneticist, but you can look it up online and see that these things do exist. So these are the arguments that I would have posed against these young men here. And I hope that people watch this. Most people, when they hear this stuff, they don't want to hear it, because it's too hard to comprehend. But it's actual science, And I wish that more people would understand and watch my videos and use what I'm telling you. I'm giving you so much power here by telling you all these things. Look, I lived through the racism here from the 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way up to the attack of the trade centers. And 20 years were out of my life were taken from that. What did I do? I hunkered down and worked even harder and studied harder, and that's what I did. They expected me to do other things. They even tried to entrap me. That didn't work because you're trying to do something to a man that has a mind and a brain. I feel so sorry for all the black people in the past here in America, the brilliant black people that had to go through this type of degradation and torture. It's horrible what we're facing. But let's hear what they have to say here. Let's go further.
The data's wrong, brother. The data's been written by somebody that's that's setting a narrative.
So
you know what I'm saying?
So let me respond to that.
You got to really dive into history, brother, because when the more information you have, it's kind of hard to be. You can't be racist when you understand history. I couldn't be like you literally can't.
So like I said from the beginning, so I have no desire to reign supreme in any sort of ultimate sense over anybody. I don't have the desire to dehumanize, as you put it. But you can take my word for that, or you can think I'm lying. It doesn't really make a difference.
You guys going off strictly off numbers,
but hold on. But here's the thing. I told you at the beginning, my only goal here is to pursue truth. And in doing so, I can choose to rely on data, which I don't think all data is true because it is filtered through specific channels with incentive structures. We know this. Not all data is divorced from bias. It comes from people who measure it. That is true. But at the end of the day, you can, tell me that I'm wrong or I'm a white supremacist or whatever, because all I'm doing is attempting to pursue truth through data. But then your problem isn't even with me, it's with the data, which I'm just interpreting to be true. So I guess if it's the data that's wrong, then what exactly am I doing that's incorrect?
So here, I don't know if he knows this, but what they do is they benefit from the racism that's already been established in the Constitution, in the institutions. They benefit from it. And they have no remorse, no empathy towards any person of color, a majority of them, not all of them. Why? Because it would take away from the peace and happiness that they have if they had to share that. And that's the truth. Nobody wants to acknowledge that. I'm not saying that they're all racist. They're just benefiting from something that has already been established without trying to do anything to make this a very equal playing ground because they're comfortable. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable, and that's the truth. So I'm saying this as honestly, as fairly as I can without trying to sound one-sided. It may at times sound one-sided, but that's because of the structure of it. It has nothing to do with my own subjective, experiences at this moment in time. There are moments where my subjectivity comes into play. You'll hear it. I'll mention it, and, I take account for it. But most of the time, I try to look at this objectively. But it's so hard to speak, even for these guys being white, it's hard for them to be objective if they're speaking on behalf of white people. Same thing with him being African American. It's hard for him to stay objective if he is African American saying it. So same thing with me as being Indian American. It's hard for me to, look objective when I am trying to be.
And
what information should I trust more than the primary source material that's available, that's scientifically understood to be accurate?
It has Has any data that you received affected you?
What do you mean specifically?
Has anything that you put in your content, has you been affected by anything that you know
That
you
doesn't
say?
matter. I could be a scientist that
It
specializes.
should. I mean,
but hold
like
on.
everybody.
I could be a scientist that specializes in how to treat HIV, and I could do that my entire life, and I could never contract HIV. And then you could say, well, why do you do that? You don't have HIV. It's like I don't even know the logic there. I can have an interest in something that affects people that doesn't directly affect me.
Also, my brother and I care about our country. Really, you can divorce yourself anecdotally. You can divorce your personalized experience from the thing that you're making a point about. And the main point is that we are Americans living in the country of America. And so if there are problems that exist in our country, that's a problem for us because we care about our country.
And can I say one last thing really quick, Reese, before I pass it back to you? If I was talking about this because I had a personal experience that emotionally affected me, you could actually argue that that's a more invalid place to operate from, because then I'm operating from emotion, right? Let's say I got robbed by some black guy and then I spent the rest of my life just hating on the damn blacks because I got robbed. No, I mean, I've experienced what I would consider to be, mild racism in my life, but nothing that shifted the way that I view interpersonal relationships. I would say that I look at things as objectively as I can. I do have my own personal biases and preferences because I'm a human being, but I don't think that I'm operating from a place of personal experience necessarily, and I think that perhaps lends credence to the way that I view things.
Okay, so this goes back to what I was telling you before. Even he doesn't understand. This is almost like indirect association subjectively, if that's a term. Indirect association subjectively, meaning that he's empathizing with other white people and feeling what they feel to be able to have to come out here and explain himself and explain what he sees that's wrong in his eyes in the American society. To bring up statistics and all these things. Why else would you be doing this? Only for the money? Or is there something else? Is there a feeling that you have? There is a feeling that this man has. And I think this young black gentleman is trying to explain to the young white gentleman, or both of these young white gentlemen, that they do have these feelings. And I see that that's okay to do that. It's just like I was telling you that, yes, myself as well, as the white gentleman said, is that we're having a human experience. And that's really, if we could look at it as a human experience and kind of extract the separation of the races, which I think statistics kind of creates a bias as well, even though it's great to have the statistics in there. But if we were to look at it, as he claims, as humans, it would change the whole game. It would change things so drastically. And that's really my outcome that I want when I talk about these things, is to have an objective look and to look at us beyond the race. But if there is a problem with each and any one of us or our races, like in this situation, like I said, if it wasn't for the fact that everything was institutionalized, embedded within the Constitution and the way of life in America, the racism that has been set upon the United States, the land of the United States of America, with the destruction of Native Americans, the enslavement of other races to do their work here. I mean, even the Irish, when they came here, and the Italians had to go through a bias here. And they ended up starting gangs like every other ethnic culture. So these things do exist. Okay? So let's get rid of the idea, or try hard to keep away from the idea that we're all exclusive by race. I hope that helps to clarify some of how I feel.
So you said you care about your country, right?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
do you believe that racism is what is keeping our country back and ruining our country today? Because if you look at it, right, we don't have free healthcare, the educational system. We can talk about, the J's and all that, what's going on with our government and everything else. But I feel as though if we didn't have to deal with racism, we would have been a way better country compared to, we supposed to be living like how China is living. That's supposed to be America. But with all this, racism,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So
China
I
doesn't have
believe-
black people, for the record.
Well, China has racial homogeneity, and that is what we are advocates for. I think the major problem is that we don't have homogeneity. So I would say that is a fundamentally racial issue, but I wouldn't say that it's fundamentally racist. And also, For the sake of, and also as a matter of extending respect to you as well, I'm trying to understand what you're asking specifically. When you say racism is the biggest problem in America that's preventing us
It
from
is.
making, okay, so what does that word mean specifically? Like, how would you
Is
define
keeping
racism?
us is keeping us from growing as a nation. We're not a nation. We're
Okay,
not a
so-
civilization.
Okay, understood. But I'm trying to understand your point of view. How is that happening, like specifically, so I can respond to that? You see what I'm saying?
How is like you want me to define something? Like what you asking?
How would you define what racism is, and how is it holding us from making progress?
You gave the
I
example of
mean-
free healthcare and stuff. Is that somewhere along the lines of where you're going with it? Like economic prosperity?
free everything, like the quality of life.
Well, let me say something to that.
We're the richest country on earth. The quality of life, the even the design, the system, the systemic system that they created is all just to keep. Because you gotta understand, white people fall into that same category. I don't know, maybe it's classism first, and then you get racism. But we're developing too much as a people, and we're starting to understand that we have a system that is damaging everyone, and I feel as though because racism.
I think that there is truth in what you're bringing to light right now. But I will insert maybe something that could maybe refocus your perspective on it. Earlier, you alluded to the fact that numerically, because whites are a majority population, which will be not the case soon, they cause the most amount of crime, numerically. And blacks being such a small population, 12, 13%, they don't commit as much crime. Now, if you want to talk about, systemic injustice or something like that, there's a very small amount of elite people that control the capital. And a lot of those are white people. Some of them are Jewish people. And then there's like a few Asians in there. But the vast majority, numerically, of people who are disenfranchised by this class struggle, as you put it, are white people because they're a majority population. Now, per capita, which is the idea that I presented to you earlier, blacks receive social benefits at a higher rate. But in terms of numerical population, other populations do, because they're more people. So if anything, if we want to talk sheer numbers, whites experience the most dispossession than any other group, especially because we pay the most into the taxpayer base and other populations beneath us are a net negative via their entire lifetime.
So you guys feel though, because that's another thing I want to challenge, right? You guys feel though white men are losing rights or something like that, or y'all's just not getting like.
So before he goes on to say anything else, let me point something out. You notice when he went to say the word Jewish people, it was blurted out. Why do you have to censor out the name Jewish when I can say black, Indian, Spanish, white, and every other ethnicity on this planet, but he blurts out Jewish because for some reason he knows something. He must have experienced that he probably checked the statistics on his videos where they use the name or the term Jewish, and it probably gets no views. They probably get blocked and censored. That's probably why that happens. That shows you how much power is involved with the Zionists, how much control. If white people are afraid to say that word, that tells you something. Now, let me go further onto what he's talking about here. The disproportionatism that he's talking about, the young black gentleman, between all the races, especially the people of color, or if you want to emphasize black people here in the United States. And the reason that he brings that up is for what I said earlier, that when you come from an institutionalized government, institutionalized racism in the government, a systemic, as the word that he used, system that he said, right? Everything was embedded into the Constitution. Okay, everything was embedded into the culture and the lifestyle of these people. It was their way of life. So that means that everything they created, from the point of black people being called 2/5 or 3/5 of a human, it was a white person that developed that in the Constitution. Okay, when all the laws were created, black men especially got harsher treatment. That's been proven already as a fact. That's why they had to enact the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement in America was not enacted for black people. It was enacted for the treatment against black people by white people. That's why the Civil Act was enacted. That's why it came into play with human rights. Now, to take that a step further, if this disproportionate percentage of the 14% of black people is so dangerous to the United States, We'll know that it's very dangerous when they enact a second civil rights movement, a second civil rights act, and it states that racism from black people has to be controlled, just like what they did with white people before the civil rights movement, the first civil rights movement. So hypothetically, I'm saying if black people get so bad enough that the entire United States is being affected, like it was back in the day with black people being affected and other races being affected by the dominance of the white race, and the horrible human rights violations that were committed and crimes and atrocities by the Caucasians back then, the white race back then, that's why the Civil Act was enacted. If we have to enact Civil Rights Act Part 2 for black people, then we'll know that we're on equal playing field when it comes to that type of treatment. When I say equal playing field, meaning that, yes, they're behaving so bad that the entire United States, all white people are terrified, just like black people felt. But that never has happened. Black people have not gotten to the point where they have enslaved white people. White people can walk any part of this land of the United States and pretty much know that they have the law and everything else on their side. So that's what he's getting at. That's what, if you look at the history itself, like this white gentleman keeps saying, look at the historical facts, the figures, and it tells you what the actual proportions were, and the percentages. But like I said, think about it. Once they enact a second civil rights movement, and we'll know that black people have gotten to the point where white people once were. We don't want that to happen, but that's what these two young men are trying to allude to, that people of color, especially black men or black people, are committing the most crimes. Check history, man. Check history. And you can't say that doesn't count, that doesn't matter, because he just said 100 times, these two young white gentlemen just said history, percentages, historical figures. He said you can measure it through history. That's why I'm bringing history up. I wouldn't have even thought of it just now, would I, until he brought it into the picture. So you can't even use the argument to go against what I'm saying. But let's go a little bit further, and I'll leave this video, and we'll go to something else later.
Respected, or like you say you can't speak your mind, there's a lot of stuff that I'm trying to understand, right? But
I would say, to respond to that, and I don't think this will resonate, but it is my belief that our birthright is currently being robbed from us. When you measure out the contributions of different groups throughout history, it is mainly our group that has created the most, measurably, in terms of innovation, the spreading of technology, etc. And if that weren't true, then people wouldn't be coming all over the world just to live in our countries.
Okay, this goes, again, the reason that happened, here comes the proportions again, the disproportionate nature of who had the best education, the best facilities, the best way of life. That was done by force in the United States of America. They built the projects, poverty-stricken areas like that for a reason. Every time black people tried to build up societies, they were bombed and taken down. That's a fact in history. There's many different instances where you can see that happening. They had a Black Wall Street at one time that was destroyed because it was doing so well. So they've prevented black people from getting to that level. Now, they brought up the elitists, right? The small few percentage of the elite, right? And he did mention that some of them are, or a lot of them are white. He brought up some truth there, but he didn't emphasize any of where that came from, meaning the wealth. The wealth that those white families have was because of the backs of the black people and the other different ethnicities that worked for free during that time. Imagine if you had a company and nobody got paid and they just did your work for you. Think about it. Like, AI is so great today because of that reason. That's why companies are jumping to AI. I love the idea of AI because you don't have to harm anyone. But the reality is the only people who are getting harmed are the ones that are losing their jobs. So it seems like there's a constant cycle of, we find something new and great, but another problem is created again. So that's it's like almost like a cycle that we can't break. But it's always going to happen that way. But that's my take on what he's saying here. I hope that makes sense. And if you guys have any questions, of anything that I had said in any of this video, please, comment. Give me some feedback. I'd like that. Most people, may be afraid to say something. I'm always going to be respectful and answer on an intellectual basis. I probably, when I was younger, I may have gotten upset and things like that. These days, I just don't have the time or the energy.
So I think that's a pretty objective thing. And if you consider that with the fact that most white people, as my brother already described, are paying more into the system than they are taking out, there is a nature of dispossession happening there. You take that coupled with the fact that white people, even by virtue of saying, hey, I don't want my race to go extinct like we're saying, are perceived as supremacist or hateful. They get attacked, they get debanked, they can't take transportation, they can get put onto no-fly lists, just by virtue of being a white person who says, I don't want my people to be dispossessed off the face of the earth. And so...
Okay, I'm going to stop this here because it seems like they're getting to the victimization. Let me see where I stopped here. I'm at 24:02. I'm probably going to do another video on this at a later time, but I want to see how this video does first. If you guys hear anything, like I said, that may have sparked you in a certain way, please, give me some feedback. Let me hear what you guys have to say. I'm bringing up some really great, valid points. And if you guys can handle that, and you have an answer for me, give it to me. But a majority of the times, you guys have no answer. And that's the truth. I'm going to give this video a like because I worked on it here with you guys. I want to thank these guys, Jack, for doing their video, and thank this gentleman here for being in that video. And I'm totally enjoying it. But like I said, there's a lot more to the story than they're alluding to at this moment in time. And hopefully we'll get to deal with that at some point. Guys, thank you so much for being here and enjoying this. I hope I'll leave you guys with this. Think about it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment far outweigh the dangers which are cited to justify it. It's not what your country can do for you, it's what your country can do to you